This is David Sneddon. In 2004, he was a college student studying abroad in China. As a devout Mormon, he had spent years in South Korea mastering the Korean language and had set his sights on becoming fluent in Mandarin Chinese. He was an avid outdoorsman, an Eagle Scout who had spent much of his childhood backpacking through the mountains of his native Utah. He was planning to return home from China soon, but he wanted to do one last hike in western China's tiger-leaping gorge. Somewhere on that hike, however, David disappeared without a trace. His family was told that he drowned, but one day in 2016, a claim surfaced in the Japanese press so strange it's hard to believe. That report claimed that David was living in North Korea under an assumed name, married with 2 children, and was the personal English teacher of none other than North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. David Sneddon was born May 3, 1980, and today would be 45 years old. At the time of his disappearance, he was attending Brigham Young University, a very common institution for those in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He was spending a summer taking language classes at Beijing International University. He planned to meet his brother, one of 10 siblings, in Seoul, South Korea in about 2 weeks. In the meantime, however, David traveled to Yunnan province to hike a scenic canyon on the Jinsha River. The day that he left, he emailed his mother, "I'm in Lijiang now in western Yunnan province. I will take a bus to hike Tiger Leaping Gorge in about half an hour. I'm having a great time here, but nonetheless am excited to come home." It would be the last message his mother received from her son. While he was in Tiger Leaping Gorge, David encountered a local named He Shuchang, who was guiding 2 clients up the canyon. David's pale skin, combined with his skills in the Chinese language, surprised and charmed the people that he ran into, and they decided to continue the hike together. David ended up staying the night at Tina's guest house, which is a scenic hostel on the far end of the gorge. The next morning, David continued on the path alone. By the 26th of August, the day that David was supposed to meet up with his brother, David's brother called their parents to say that David had never arrived in Seoul. At the Sneddon family's urging, the Chinese began an investigation into David's whereabouts. They reportedly looked in the area's hospitals, jails, and mental facilities, but found nothing. David had $700 in his bank account which had not been touched, and his passport had not been used to leave the country. David was by all accounts a happy and adventurous person, ruling out the possibility that he had ended his own life. Ruling out these other factors, the Chinese government said that they believed David had drowned in the flood-prone, treacherous depths of the Jinsha River. Despite this theory, the Sneddon family resolved to travel to Yunnan to investigate what had become of David. In mid-September, the family arrived and hired a translator and a hiking guide to help them through the gorge. By a strange coincidence, they too bumped into He Shuchang, the guide David had encountered. They showed him a photo of David, and the guide recognized him immediately, saying that David had passed through the gorge with them. To the Sneddons, this meant that David could not have drowned. When David's family came to the other side of the gorge, a town called Shangri-La, they asked among the locals if anyone had seen them. They came upon a small Korean restaurant called the Yak Bar, where the owner, a young woman of about 25 years old, said emphatically that she had seen David dine 3 times in her restaurant. On August 14th, he stopped in to say goodbye, which would have left him plenty of time to return to Seoul and meet his brother later that month. The family was able to find an additional 11 people that remembered David in Shangri-La. The Sneddons were excited at this news, but when they implored the Chinese government to interview the 12 people, every single one of them reversed their story. The young woman who owned the Yak Bar, despite detailing the 3 different times that David had eaten with her, now said she couldn't say for sure whether she had ever seen him. The trail guide He Shuchang, who had shown both David and his worried family through the gorge, now said he didn't know for sure that David was the man who he spent the day with. It seemed as though someone had put a scare into every person the Sneddons had spoken with, leading them all to change their stories. North Korean agents were known to operate in this area, and the Chinese had coordinated closely with them in the past, including arresting those who had tried to escape North Korea. So it seemed possible that this was an incident of international kidnapping. It would not be the first time the North Koreans had illegally held a United States citizen within their borders. In 1965, Sergeant Charles Jenkins of the U.S. Army made the worst mistake of his life when, in attempting to avoid being sent to Vietnam, he drunkenly stumbled from his post in South Korea across the border into the Hermit Kingdom and was put to use as an English teacher over the course of 4 decades of imprisonment there. Jenkins' story is fascinating and much too detailed to get into here, but he writes about it at length in his book, The Reluctant Communist, which describes his eventual reunion with his 91-year-old mother after more than 4 decades. Coincidentally, or perhaps not, Jenkins, who had served as a translator, was released from North Korea only about a month before David Sneddon was kidnapped, which, in retrospect, fits well into a theory posed in 2012 by the National Association for the Rescue of Japanese Kidnapped by North Korea. The NARKN said that their most reliable source, a North Korean defector, had documents showing that the Chinese had arrested a young man in Yunnan province under suspicion of helping North Korean defectors. This young man, the source said, was an American, studying at a Chinese university, and had been handed over to 5 North Korean secret agents operating in Western China. Shortly after, another source said that David had been spotted just outside Pyongyang, teaching English. 4 years later, the most explosive tip came from another group which is dedicated to the issue of North Korean abductions. The leader of that group stated to Yahoo News Japan that David Sneddon was not just any English teacher, but the personal tutor of Kim Jong-un, the tyrannical leader of North Korea. According to this man, David Sneddon, now 45 years old, lives under the name of Yoon Bong-soo. He is married to a woman named Kim Yoon-hae and has a son and a daughter. Over the years, the Sneddon family has implored the United States government to act more decisively to bring David Sneddon home. Unfortunately, due to the complicated and volatile nature of US-China relations, this effort has not led to much. The US government's official position is that there is no verifiable evidence of Sneddon's whereabouts. Due to the extremely restrictive nature of the laws under which the North Korean people live, it's difficult to know for sure what became of Sneddon. But David's family still believes he is alive, and not without reason.